Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining today's small business webinar. This is the fifth small business webinar, and today's topic is professional services contracting. What's in an RFP? Next slide, Rian. Thank you. So just once again, a couple additional items for housekeeping. As some of you have joined, please do keep yourselves on mute. If you have questions, please utilize the chat feature. We have staff from the Office of Procurement that can answer general questions about RAMP or any general questions that you may have in terms of the city. But when it comes to more specific content from the presentation, please do hold those at the end. We will have a question and answer time as well as like a fireside chat slash panel discussion as well. So please do hold your questions there, and also please do feel free to use that chat function to drop them in there. We'll go through that list. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining the fifth installation of the small business webinar. And as mentioned, we're going to be talking about professional services. Once again, we kind of did an overview on the first small business webinar about the three types of procurement within the city here. And thank you, Eric. Yes, the recording will be shared as well as a copy of the presentation, as well as additional resources that we will be packaging in a folder. So you all can review, take a look at the resources that we've amassed, as well as we have linked some of the content that is specific to these slides in that folder that we will be sharing. So thank you for that reminder. Yeah, so going back to professional services, today we'll just be doing a quick review of professional services, what it is, what are the types of professional services that the city looks for, and also more or less, we want to kind of dive into what's in a request for proposal. We want to see, we really do want to kind of hopefully help you by just understanding what's in the RFP, what's important for me. We know that RFPs can be onerously long. Even a simple RFP can be potentially up to 100 pages. And where do you want to hone in to actually see, is this an opportunity I as a business owner and a small business owner am wanting to pursue? So that'll be kind of the general theme that we will present on. And then we'll then turn it over to the Department of Transportation, where they'll give a departmental overview, opportunity forecasting on what's coming up with the Department of Transportation. And they'll also do a quick presentation on the business inclusion program and compliance requirements. So thank you to DOT in advance for that. It's actually very helpful to, they'll be going through that process, and we know there's a lot of questions on that, but yeah, it will be a very helpful presentation there. Rec and Parks is after DOT with a departmental overview and upcoming RFPs, RFX, basically RFQs as well, more or less what's coming down from the department, or excuse me, Recreation and Parks Department, and just give you a heads up there. And then finally, we'll move to the question and answer time, where we'll go through the questions in the chat, as well as we do have a few questions prepared for the panelists as well. And then at the end, we do have the business resources, links, and we do have a link to a small business webinar survey that we would love for each and every one of you to go ahead and fill out. This will also help us to understand what content, as well as what are the things that the small business community is wanting for us to kind of create, prepare, as well as it would help us to maybe even lead or help the business source centers with content in terms of how they can also be a resource for you all as well. So with that said, please, let's go to the next slide. So yeah, let's take a look at professional services. As mentioned, professional or personal services are contracts for scientific, expert, technical, or other services of a temporary and occasional nature that are performed by independent contractors, aka you all. And so, yeah, when we look at professional services, as we mentioned before, the other two types of procurement contracting is construction, obviously not this, and then also commodities. But in this specific case, it is for personal and professional services. And once again, it's to fulfill a need, we'll contract out to fulfill a need that, city staff does not have either the time or the resources, staffing, whatever it may be. We're looking to actually have your expertise come in and assist us here. Next slide. And so examples of professional services, just as a broad categorical, I guess a broad category, is business consultants, interpretation and translation, economic analysis, educational programs, fiscal agents, mural paintings, and event planning. And so the list and the gamut is far and wide. The city does need a lot of assistance in its contracting, as well as, yeah, it could literally be from, as you see here, mural painting all the way to, economic analysis. And each of these examples are actually pulled from or excuse me, pulled from actual examples and RFPs that the city has recently released. And so, yeah, just once again, these are a couple of examples here. Next slide. And so, yeah, once again, just an overview or review of personal services contracting, as well as the City of Los Angeles, by city charter, is mandated to use a competitive bidding process for its contracting. And so what does that mean? In specific for RFPs, contracts shall be let to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, furnishing satisfactory security for performance, basically meaning the city is required to go through a competitive RFP or competitive bidding process that ultimately will be rewarded to whoever is the lowest responsive and most responsible bidder, so that you fulfill all of the requirements. You actually are the best candidate for the job, as well as we do factor in price there, but it also kind of there are other elements within the RFP that qualifies the bidder to actually be selected. And so if you have any questions here, we've linked Charter Section 371, but just want to put that out there so this is what the city has to go through a procurement and contracting process. Next slide, please. So looking at requests for proposals, right? RFP, it kind of sounds like a scary word at times. However, once again, as mentioned before, it is the city is looking for something. We are posting an opportunity because we have a need for a certain service. And so in this case, it could be, once again, technical experience, specialized capability, looking for a particular product or maybe even a service that, stems from a professional services opportunity. And so the proposal might require research, development, or a solution to be proposed and presented through your proposal. And so, we want to also usually incorporate, as well, like we want to incorporate your ideas in what the solution may be. When we're looking for services, we're not necessarily just looking for like a, just plain answer. We do also appreciate when you as the vendor will actually input your expertise and your knowledge, as well as, the value adds, so to speak. And so looking at, what's in or what we're looking for as a city, it's kind of all contained within the RFP. Next slide, please. RFQs, once again, are requests for qualifications. So the best way to look at a RFQ is more or less it's a bench list. If you think about maybe a short list or a group of vendors that the city is looking to accumulate to use for a specific purpose or professional service, the city kind of operates in a manner that when we do release a request for qualifications, very much like an RFP, where RFP is usually designed for like one vendor to win the contract and award, an RFQ could potentially be multiple. I've seen lists as large as like 10, 15, 20 vendors that are on here. And I believe DOTs, as they'll talk later of their RFQs, the list is huge as their scope of works are quite varied. But with that said, the city utilizes requests for qualifications to develop these either bench lists or a bench contract. And so they'll create for example here, a bench list to establish a pool of vendors, AKA list, to respond to subsequent solicitations. So let's just say I need pool cleaning and I want to create a bench list of pool cleaners. And so we'll basically put out the RFQ and then the bidders will respond, and then we'll check the qualifications. Everything that's kind of contained in that solicitation will basically say, okay, you're good to go, you're qualified, you're ready. And then we'll basically at the time of need or use, or if a project comes up, we'll go ahead and solicit to that selected group of people there. And then kind of taking a step further, the city also utilizes something called a bench contract, where it's not just a bench list. A bench list, you're kind of a short list of, once again, proposers or service providers that can do a certain thing. But when we talk about bench contracts, a lot of the administrative requirements are kind of done first, and then you'll basically sign your contract, and then you'll kind of be in that same kind of idea of a bench list, but you're pretty much ready to go, and you'll usually get something called a notice to proceed, or you'll be kind of up and ready. And so it's utilized to front load contractual and administrative work. And then finally, it's usually used in the cases of on-call services or emergency services, times where there is a quick need for your services there. And then next slide. So once again, what is the best way to be notified, as well as if you're interested in participating in RFPs, RFQs, professional service contracting, what is the best path forward? What is step number one with the City of Los Angeles, that is? We would recommend, and highly, highly recommend at that, register for RAMP. Register for the Regional Alliance Marketplace for Procurement at rampla.org. And once again, if you're interested in contracting and doing procurements with the City of LA, this is the place where we post all of our procurement opportunities with the City of LA, including the proprietary departments. And actually, as of a year, 2 years ago, we actually started incorporating regional partners. So there may be other opportunities that maybe are not with the City of Los Angeles, but other agencies like LAUSD, City of Hope, a lot of other private or public partners that have actually jumped onto the platform. They'll post their opportunities here as well. And we're actually partnering with LA28, just as a heads up as well. They will be utilizing our platform to announce their opportunities, as well as hopefully post their opportunities here when they're ready as well. So the next kind of thing to look at is understand your NEX code, which is your North American Industry Classification System. This is extremely important, and we actually did our first small business webinar. We talked about this, and if you haven't seen that, I would highly recommend going to that first small business webinar. We'll go ahead at the end of the presentation, put a link to the YouTube page where it contains that presentation. You will want to figure out how to classify your business. And that also determines what opportunities and what notifications you will receive. But we do actually have a run through of that NEX code selection. And so please do watch that. Please classify yourself in RAMP, as well as, that's kind of step number 2 there. And then finally, for more information about RAMP tips and tricks, we actually, and the registration as a whole, we actually have monthly RAMP registration webinars. And we actually have that as a monthly resource for businesses looking to register for RAMP. And hopefully, if you need we actually have a question and answer time there where we have staff as well as the presenter that can answer your questions about RAMP and registration, and maybe anything else RAMP related as well. So next slide, please. So let's jump into it. What's in an RFP? And so as you see Stephen Colbert here, flipping through a bunch of pages, RFPs can be onerous. They can be long. They can be hundreds of pages, right, of just page after page after page. But at the end of the day, you really do want to ask yourself, especially as a small business, is this an opportunity that I want, or my company wants to jump into? And what we're hoping through this, we'll kind of go over kind of at a high level what's contained in the RFP, why it's important, and ultimately, where to hone in on specifically, so you can get an understanding relatively quickly if this is something that you want to pursue. So if we jump into it here, first off, an overview of services needed. Like, what is the problem statement that the city is trying to solve by releasing this solicitation? That's first and foremost. That's usually in the beginning. Next is a contract term, funding amount, and source. Where does that money come from? How much is available? Departments sometimes will not always get into how much money is available. However, they can actually put that out there as well if they choose to, if it's helpful for the department as well as the vendor. And then also, most importantly, I would say here, looking at the scope of work. And so as a small business, you'll want to kind of hone in extraordinarily quickly at the scope of work. What is it that the city is looking for in specificity? A good scope of work should be very detailed, right? It should be very clear on what the city is looking for, because, that is more or less what we are contracting out for. And then that scope of work, the services required, services needed, will turn into the evaluation criteria, which we'll get into in a couple points next. And so, yeah, so if there's a piece of advice I can just put there, please do hone in on the scope of work. That's an area that you'll really want to take a look at to see, is your firm or your company capable of providing the services necessary for this solicitation. Next is the minimum qualifications. Also, and it's very important to know what does the city kind of want as a minimum qualified, I guess, vendor? Like, is it location? Is it the size, your experience? What are the things that are, I guess, important to the city to know that this is the vendor that will be doing the work. The next and fifth one on here is the evaluation criteria and review process. In the RFP, it'll tell you this is how we're going to evaluate your proposal. And so they'll actually list like 5 to 10 different categories and then the points associated, and actually show you, by the way, this is what specifically we're looking for, how many points that we're assigning to that category, and then ultimately that's how you accumulate your points there. And so with that, we'll go next slide. And so the next slide, what's in an RFP? And we basically also put if you're considering bidding. So the first one is if you're more or less just trying to find what's important and what is actually what's in the RFP. The next part is more specific to, are you actually, if you're serious about thinking, I'm going to propose for this RFP or RFQ, take a look at these categories as well, or these sections within the solicitation. When is the question deadline? That's actually an extremely important one, because you need to know when you can, put your questions in before they stop taking questions. When is the pre-proposal conference, right? Looking at the pre-proposal conference, highly recommended if the department does hold one. Usually they're not mandatory, but if BIP is, it is. But all to say, if there is a pre-proposal conference, I would highly recommend you all go attend, because that is where you ask your questions. You actually are able to hear from the department themselves, as well as potentially meet other vendors that are, looking to subcontract or partner or or anything like that. And I believe DOT will be speaking on that as well later. But BIP. Yeah, is BIP in this project? Is it actually a part of this solicitation? And the BIP is the Business Inclusion Program, which is the city's inclusion and outreach program for subcontractors. And so is that actually a part of this RFP? If so, there are steps that will be involved in terms of responding to BIP. So DOT will also be, thankfully, giving us a presentation there. And they actually do the business inclusion program very well as well. So it'll be good to hear from them. Proposal format. And so this is another area in which it's helpful to know how the city wants you to respond to the proposal. City and departmental contracting requirements. More or less, what is required? What are the contractual requirements that you are agreeing to by coming into the city as a business? And so, yeah, there in the first webinar, we did kind of an overview. DOT will actually do a similar overview as well in terms of contracting requirements and when things are available, or excuse me, when things are necessary, and when you have to turn your contractual requirements in, or contract compliance requirements, excuse me. General terms and conditions, and then finally submission deadline. When is this due? And so these are all areas in which if you're actually consider bidding, you should also be taking a look at these sections within the RFP. Find out the information here, and if something is not clear, please do email the contract administrator, which the email is listed on RAMP. And so next page, and then. So it's a little small, but we'll go ahead and we'll share this deck afterwards. But this is just a example RFP overview. This is something that the Office of Procurement has created to kind of, I guess you could say, condense a lot of the information that I just talked about into a single page. You have your date issued, when you're expecting this to start, what's the RFP number, estimated budget, description of scope of work, pre-proposal conference, BIP outreach deadline, and so forth. And so please, I would say some, if not most, departments have a page like this where they'll actually accumulate a lot of the important material as well and information. Please do review it, and please keep this handy as well. Next slide, please. And so scope of work, once again, this is an example of a scope of work that the Office of Procurement has has actually let out as a solicitation, and we'll go over that in a couple of slides. But yeah, please do dive into the scope of work. And as mentioned before, please actually understand what is the city looking for, and do you fit what the city is looking for. And so that's why this is one of the most important places to directly go to, so that you know exactly, is this something that I or my company can provide. And then we'll go next slide, please. And then, yes, and then as discussed before, minimum requirements, level of experience, successful past outcomes, references, staff, required technical capabilities, business location. These are all the things that are at minimum what your company should have if you're looking to participate. Next slide. And then we also went over the submission format. And so, what should what should the proposal look like? Does it need a cover letter? Does it need authorized signatures, and from who? What are your minimum qualifications again? Proposed staffing and project organization, work plan, references. These are all things that, this will be contained within this section. What is it that the city is asking you, and how is the city asking you to package your proposal? And so please do follow this. Sometimes we have seen vendors that don't follow it, and they'll end up missing things. And so that's definitely something you don't want to do. And then just as a next slide, please. Proposal content. This is something else I want to just kind of quickly address and give you guys a heads up on, is that the RFP should actually, or your proposal should actually contain the information from the RFP. And as simple as that sounds, sometimes, vendors will include, RFPs or responses from other agencies and so forth, but you'll want to more or less make sure that you're hitting on the scope of work, you're hitting on kind of what the problem statement is. You want to answer the RFP in its totality, essentially. You don't want to pull from other materials. You want to basically answer specifically what is contained in that RFP. And so, yeah. By the way, in terms of, proposal content, it also talks about, the information coming from your RFP, your pre-proposal conference, amendments, addenda, or other materials published by the city relating to the RFP as well. So these are all relevant and helpful materials, as well as the materials that you should use to develop and craft your response. Next slide. So evaluation criteria, and I apologize for accelerating because we are running a little short, but on time. But evaluation criteria, we have qualifications of firm, experience, technical competence, personnel management and work plan, cost and budget breakdown, project plan, cost proposal, budget, financial statements, invoicing, financial stability. These are all hypothetical areas in which your evaluation criteria can be based upon. These will more or less be, once again, linked to the scope of work, because in these categories in your evaluation, how are you going, the city is trying to look at how can we evaluate this person, assign points, is this person qualified, do they have the experience, the technical competence necessary to hopefully do this project successfully. And so that's what we're looking at here. And then we'll go to the next slide. So we have a sample evaluation. This is actually just, once again, hypothetical, but this is what it'll look like in the RFP. Your demonstrated ability, demonstrated capacity, program design, cost reasonableness, as well as, a local business preference if applicable. But yeah, you'll see a breakdown of how the city will be scoring your evaluation from your proposal for the RFP. Next slide. And then what we have here is we have actually released a RFP, I believe, in 2023 for content development for online procurement training. So this Office of Procurement is looking to standardize procurement training for its staff, and this is something that we let out to hire an instructional designer to help us with this standardized procurement training. And so we've gone ahead and we've actually included a copy of the RFP as well as the awarded proposer's proposal. And so we actually want you to after after this presentation, as kind of maybe one of the checklists and things that you can do to just kind of understand what what can you expect in this process? What does a successful proposer look like? What was the city looking for? And ultimately, how did the vendor respond? We want you to A/B these. And so take a look at, what our, initial RFP was, and then ultimately what the successful proposer, in this case, Kinetic, and you can go to the next slide there, how they responded to that. And so please do review it. We asked our contractor if it's okay if we let this out to you guys, and they're more than happy to. This is just a example of what a good proposal can look like. And so it's not always going to be the same, including the RFPs. RFPs can kind of take multiple flavors from the departments, but once again, we hope that this is a resource that you can use to just get an understanding of what a RFP was and the successful proposer was, and then hopefully get ideas as well as hopefully help you on your journey in procurement contracting. And so we'll go to the next slide. And so I'll turn it over actually to Rihanna, and she'll go over a exciting resource that our office has created for the small business community as well.
Yes, so good afternoon, everybody. Hi, my name is Rihanna Boswell, and I work with Daniel over at the Office of Procurement, Strategy, and Policy team. Something we created for you here at OOP is a small business pamphlet as a means of helping you, the small businesses, better prepare and understand how to do business with the city. So just to give you an overview about what this pamphlet includes, it has a few pages. The first page gives you some tips and tricks about how to best navigate RAMP for your business, such as how to register for RAMP, how to build your profile, and finding your NAICS codes. The second page talks about the city's different certification programs, how to get certified, what are the benefits of being certified, and various certification resources within the city's Bureau of Contract Administration, who handles the city certification programs. The next two pages just give an overview about understanding the city's contract requirements, such as the city standard provisions, insurance requirements, and the industry-related ordinances that relate to your business and services, as well as a checklist of the city's of the different cities' minimums, contracting requirements, and compliance forms. This checklist too has lists to all of the different compliance forms that you could read about them in advance. The next page includes some information about the different types of solicitations, like RFP, or what is an RFQ, a request for qualifications, that you could see on RAMP, as well as the overall bid submission process from beginning to end. And this pamphlet also at the very end has some resources you can revert to about various small business initiatives from the city, like Accessing LA, the Business Source Centers, as well as any resources from the county and the federal level, such as the U.S. Small Business Association and the LA County's Procurement Technical Assistance Center. It's a big pamphlet with a lot of information. Much of the information here has been covered through the small business webinar series, but we created this for you as a means of having more resources to support you and encourage your business to maybe do business with the city. There are a few pages in the pamphlet and it has a lot of information, but this is just to give you an overview about what this pamphlet is and how it could be helpful to you and your business. And we know we have a lot of resources that we're throwing at you today. So when we do send you the recording, we will also include this pamphlet in that email for you to refer to. And that's it on my end about the pamphlet. Thank you.
Thank you, Rihanna. And then actually, we do have one other resource that our office would like to present to you today, and I'll hand it over to Grace.
Okay, yes. Rihanna, can you put the slide back up? Hi, everyone. So we created the contract compliance guidebook for vendors. We recognize the contracting process can often be confusing for some vendors to navigate with regards to what is required of them. As a vendor's resource to contract compliance with the City of Los Angeles, we provided summaries, links to the forms, and additional assistance where we outlined the requirements for the vendor during the bidding process, which include the following information: an overview of what to submit with the response or proposal, what should be submitted on RAMP LA by the proposal date. Additionally, for those successful proposals, we list the required documents to be submitted prior to contract award, information on the city contract compliance. Additionally, within the guidebook, there's an appendix where we have copies of the forms that are not available online. And lastly, an overview of the documentation to be submitted within 15 days of project completion. We hope that this guidebook will be a resource for vendors to sort of make this process a lot easier and have the information available to them so they know exactly what is required of them and when and where to submit the documentation.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. And yeah, once again, we're excited for both of these guides as well as the pamphlet and the guide book because yeah, they really do tell you where can you find out more information. For example, this contract compliance guidebook. What is the contract compliance requirement that you're actually agreeing to? What does it entail? What are the instructions for you as the vendor? And when do you have to submit it, as Grace was just mentioning? So that's why we're excited to release this as well as the previous small business pamphlet, a very helpful guide of amassment of the information that we've compiled from these small business webinars. It's the first iteration. And once again, both of these actually it's the first iterations of them, and we will continue to update them and also mold them as we kind of, if there is a need, we'll change them as well. So yeah, we're excited for both of these things. So please do take a look at both resources. We have them linked at the end of the presentation. And once again, they will be in the folder that we will be emailing to all of you. And with that said, we will be turning it now over to next slide. We will be turning it over to, I believe, Robin from LADOT. Thank you, Robin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually going to have Lindsay Estes, Department Contract Coordinator, start our portion. So with that, I'll kick it off to Lindsay.
Everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Lindsay Estes, as Robin mentioned, with LADOT. I'm the Department Contract Coordinator. So just briefly about LADOT, we lead transportation planning, project delivery, and operations in the city. And you can see some additional information there about some of the services that we provide. Our mission is to lead transportation planning, project delivery, and operations in the city. We work together and collaborate to deliver a safe, livable, and well-run transportation system in the city and region. Next slide, please. So my team over at LADOT, there are 4 of us on the contracts team. Myself, Robin Quintanilla, who I will hand it over to in just a minute. And we have Baron Leitner and Emerson Belen to round out our team who work on administering the contracts for LADOT. And you can see there, if you have any questions, we can all be reached at the email address there at the bottom of the slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to hand it over to Robin to discuss some of our upcoming RFP and RFQ opportunities, as well as some tips and tricks about RFPs and RFQs. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So as Lindsay said, we are the Department of Transportation, and here are a couple of requests for proposals and requests for qualifications that will be going out this year. Currently, we have one that was just released on Friday. So if you are interested, on the slide that we will be showing at the bottom when you have it in the deck in your hand, you can go ahead and look that up on Ramp. Next slide. So here's a couple of tips and tricks that we like to share with everyone. Of course, please create a Ramp profile. And if you have other colleagues or companies that you work with, please encourage them to do that as well, because that way it just makes your process a lot faster when you do want to go ahead and go in for a proposal on with the city of LA. Check important dates. This is essential. There are some important dates, and fortunately, we have at the beginning of all of our RFPs and RFQs a layout of the important dates. But something we always recommend is for you to look at the city contracting requirements first. And you're probably thinking like, no, I want to see the scope of work. Well, what happens is there's a limited window where you can submit questions. After that window has closed, we can no longer assist you anymore. It is called a blackout phase. So we strongly encourage you to please review those city contracting requirements, because a lot of times people wait till the end and then they have all these questions and we can't help you. And so we wouldn't want to have to dismiss a proposal because you didn't have the opportunity to look at those questions. So always check important dates. And of course, questions. Questions as soon as possible. You don't have to review the whole document to submit questions. Submit them as they go. For LADOT, within all of our opportunities, we have a Google form. So you can literally be inputting questions as you go, and then we'll go ahead and answer them when we post it. Check Ramp LA all the time for opportunities. This is a very good, informative webinar, and they have a lot of webinars, and just check online as much as possible. And then, of course, check all your submissions, make sure there's signatures. These are big ones. Sometimes when you download the PDFs, we've had cases where people submit their document, but they've signed it by hand and then they don't scan both sides. So please take a look at it before you submit it. And of course, make sure that you submit for all the deliverables. Next slide. We do have apparel services, so we do have a contract for that. So right now I'm going to go over some big RFPs. And the reason why we selected these is because since you are mostly small businesses, you have certain components and niches that you can go ahead and submit. So even though you see a big contract such as these, most of our contracts are 5 years with 2 one-year extensions. We have here's a little breakdown of all the little things that can go ahead and be taken apart. But we might go ahead and put in some NAICS codes that we think may be applicable towards the project. But when you're reviewing the scope of work, if you identify something that you believe you can do, please submit the proposal to potential primes because they can go ahead and put you on their team. A lot of the projects at LADOT are of teams of contractors of like 5, 7 contractors working together because our projects are so large. Currently, we just released on Friday this opportunity for transit technology. It currently uses our buses for our Dash and our Commuter Express, and they tell us all the real time. So if you ever go on one of our services, it tells you the real-time information. You can also go to ladotbus.com, and we are currently looking for a company to come and help us with this. This includes print, marketing, analytics, all of this. So please take some time to take a look at that opportunity. Next slide. The other one that we will be releasing this year is the Transit Customer Service Center. So LADOT has a transit component where we are the second largest transit provider in the LA County, and we're actually number 1 in the city of Los Angeles. So we will be releasing a customer service RFP so that somebody can go ahead and manage it for all of our transit opportunities. Next slide. We have transportation operations. We currently have 4 yards in for our services, and we are going to be going out for RFPs. A part of this, again, there are so many levels to operations. It's not just the drivers, it's administration, it's the marketing, it's so many components. So please take a look at it. We will be releasing this hopefully by the end of this year. Next slide. Landscape management and facility. LADOT has certain Metrolink stations. We have some park and rides and transit hubs and 1 bus facility. We will be releasing a request for qualifications for managing this. And again, this is many different layers from uptake to landscaping to signage. Please take a look at it. We hope to release it later this year. Next slide. We have the pavement marking. So this is procuring the paint and working with our project managers in making sure that we have all the paint readily available that you see throughout the streets of Los Angeles. Next slide. We are also looking for an intelligent parking management. We call it LA Express Park. When you go into certain areas of Los Angeles, such as downtown Los Angeles, you can go ahead and download an app currently, and it will tell you a parking space that is available. This has been a pilot for the last 10 years, and LADOT is looking to expand it and bring it to the forefront. So we will be releasing a RFP later this year. Actually, in the next couple months, we'll be releasing it, where we're looking for a team of contractors to come on and help us with it. Again, it is outreach, marketing, printing, education, purchasing. Please take a look at it. And hopefully one of you guys can go ahead and be a part of the team. Next slide. And then we actually are establishing our on-call professional bench. And so we are in the process of that. And what that means, similar to what they spoke about earlier today, is we will have over 100 contractors that have already gone through the contracting component. So these are prime contractors. But LEDOT, we have 14 categories, and we will be releasing what we call task order solicitations, which are for 12 to 18-month project. What we do is we release these task order solicitations to our bench, but then our bench, these contractors that have already gone through this process, will have to complete BIP. And Lindsay will discuss that a little bit more in the second part of our presentation. And anything over 150K, they're going to have to reach out to small businesses and see if you can partner up. So please keep an eye on this. You may not be on the bench, but if you see an opportunity that you know that your company can work and do the work, then please speak to the prime, and hopefully you guys can be a part of some teams. So we're really excited about that. Next slide. And now I'm going to kick it back to Lindsay, and she's going to go over the city contracting requirements.
Thank you, Robin. So as a couple of the presenters have mentioned, there are city contracting requirements that are very important to be aware of and on top of if you're going to be submitting a response to any opportunities issued through RAMP. And so we'll go over the different sections of documents. This is the city contracting requirements checklist that LEDOT includes with all of our proposals, which shows a list of the different sections of documents that are required with your proposals. And we'll go over the different sections briefly just to kind of get an idea of what is required and when. So you can see here that section 1, and we'll go a little more into these. Section 1, these are required to be submitted along with your proposal. So whenever that due date is for the proposal you're submitting, these documents are required at that time. Also, the section 2, those are also required at the time of submission, but these are submitted through RAMP LA. It looks like our I'll have to update our checklist. It still has Babin, which is our former system. But those 3 documents, those are also required at time of submission. But again, those are submitted through RAMP LA instead of the section 1 documents, which are submitted in PDF form along with your proposal. Section 3, these come later. This is if you are recommended for a contract award, and whoever is administering that opportunity will be in touch with your firm if you are selected. Those are going to be required at that time, so not with your proposal, just prior to being awarded the actual contract. And then section 4, these are just our standard requirements. There aren't any specific forms submitted, but they are still required as compliance documents. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just a closer up look of what's from that checklist. Again, section 1, these are all required to be, there are forms, PDF forms that are required to be submitted along with your response. And as Robin mentioned during our tips and tricks slide before, it's important to at least take kind of a cursory look at these early on in the process, even though they aren't due until your response is due, because if you have any questions about these or maybe need any assistance with filling them out, including the ones that are submitted through RAMP, the deadline for submitting questions is firm. So again, it's a good idea to kind of at least go over these to make sure that, you know, you have confidence with filling them out, so that if you do need assistance or have any questions, that whoever's answering the questions and coordinating that opportunity can provide you with responses in enough time to be able to address those issues before the proposal due date. So again, this is just a list of those forms, which will all be provided with that opportunity on ramp LA. Next slide, please. So section 2, again, these are also required along with at the same time as a proposal due date, but these are submitted online as opposed to as PDFs with your submission. So these are submitted through Ramp LA. And if there are any issues with getting these filled out, there are a lot of resources on Ramp LA, as the other presenters have mentioned, about how to submit these documents through your profile on Ramp LA. Item M, that's the local business preference program. So that's only if you have been approved as a local business. And again, there's a lot of resources, including a manual for being determined to be eligible for that program through Ramp LA. So again, I would take some time, going around Ramp LA to kind of see what resources are available. So those are for if you're a local business, you may be eligible to get some additional points, which again will be outlined in that specific opportunity that you're looking at. Next slide, please. So again, these are just a list of what we were looking at before on the checklist. These aren't required with your submission. It's still a good idea to be aware of them, and these will be required prior to actually being awarded the contract. So what will happen if you've submitted a proposal, you will receive at some point, receive a notice about whether or not you've been awarded that particular contract. And if so, these are what you will have to comply with at that time. Next slide, please. Thank you. And again, these aren't specific forms. They're also just part of our city contracting requirements. And again, they're just something to kind of have on your radar and submit any questions that you may have to the administrator of that particular RFP or RFQ that you're responding to. And they should be able to provide you with guidance on those. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now we're going to, as mentioned before, kind of briefly go over the business inclusion program. This is a program through the city of LA that aims to provide an equal opportunity for all businesses in the listed categories that you can see there. This is achieved through outreach and good faith negotiations with subcontractors performed in compliance with the program indicators through Ramp LA. So again, this is for when a prime contractor is submitting a response for a competitive opportunity through Ramp LA. It will be noted in that opportunity whether or not the business inclusion program is required. And failure to comply with the indicators and providing the proper forms and documentation can render that response as non-responsive and therefore not eligible to be awarded a contract. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just kind of briefly what it will look like in Ramp when you are a prime contractor going to go through the business inclusion program outreach. So you would find the opportunity here. I think in the chat, they've kind of been posting where to look for opportunities. So this is kind of where you would find one. And we're just using this one here as an example. So you would go ahead and click on that opportunity. Next slide, please. Thank you. And you can see there, it's a little small, but you'd be able to see it a little better on Ramp. You can see that there's always going to be that outreach due date. So that is the date that your BIP outreach is required to be submitted. And you can see there's that subcontractors link there. Next slide, please. And then this will show you the BIP outreach overview with the required numbers of companies you are required to perform that outreach to. So that should all be there within that page for that opportunity. And again, this is specific to each opportunity that you're looking at. So it's another thing to, when you see an opportunity that you're interested in responding to, just like with the contract compliance documents, it's a good idea to just kind of take a look at all of these things so that they're on your radar, you have them, and so that not complying with one of these things doesn't trip you up and make you ineligible to be awarded for a contract. Next slide, please. The incomplete summary columns and rows will show up red when you have not completed the outreach requirements. Next slide, please. And so this is an example of an incomplete summary sheet. So to be able to satisfy those BIP requirements, all boxes need to be green in this sheet. And that's how you know that you've completed this part of the solicitation process. Next slide, please. So you can see here is just an example of a complete outreach summary for that opportunity. Next slide. Thank you. Also, as I've said and the other presenters have said, there are a lot of resources on RAMP. You can see at RAMP up there, there's that support page. And then you can see, particularly in the user manuals there are a lot of resources for BIP, for that local business preference program I mentioned earlier, which is a certification to be certified as a local business, or any of the other certifications that we offer. There's a lot of resources there, so I definitely recommend using that as a resource. Next slide. This is that manual that we just saw on the previous page, and that will show you all of the steps to take for that. So again, these are good things to be familiar with, especially, you know, earlier on in the stages of seeing an opportunity, so that you're aware of any deadlines and requirements that we require. Next slide. And again, for questions or assistance, there are a lot of resources on RAMP, and follow those instructions on how to get any questions or anything answered. And that will hopefully set you up for success when responding to any opportunities offered by LADOT or other departments. And I think that's it for us. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one more thing. This is the sample of the Schedule A, which is for the Business Inclusion Program, which will be completed there, and will show the different requirements for that.
Thank you
Next
so much,
slide.
Lindsay.
Okay,
And
that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lindsay and Robin, for that. And with that said, we will turn it over to John Busby from Recreation and Parks.
Hi, everybody. This is John Busby from the Department of Recreation and Parks. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, great.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I've been trying to answer questions as we go along here. I'm going to try to incorporate some of the questions that you've asked that I haven't answered into my presentation. But before I do that, I just want to thank my staff member, Christina Manriquez, who helped me to put together my slide deck. I think it looks really great, and it gives you a good feeling for what our department's like. Our focus is a little bit more on a little bit more people-oriented and community-oriented than a lot of other departments. And while every department of the city of Los Angeles does really important work, we do some of the most kind of diverse and interesting things that I can imagine. I never thought I would be doing some of the contracts that I'm doing now when I first came on board. Things from surfing and whale watching tours to potential rock climbing, DJ services, and so we really do a lot of services. Next slide, please. All right, so just to give you a little bit of an overview about our department, here's some general information. We, I mean, our operating budget, workforce, et cetera. We have a lot of parks, and for the purposes of this presentation, we have a lot of service providers within our organization. Next slide, please. So we set up most of our contracts through RFQs. I really like the way that Daniel discussed this, the RFQ process. It was as a bench. Another way to think of it is that you're pre-qualified for a bench. It's like you make the cut. You have to provide a minimum amount of information about your qualifications. We review everything, and then if you are awarded a contract, you get placed on a bench. When you're on the bench, you can bid on projects, and we post everything that all of our RFQs on RAMP. So you can, one takeaway from this presentation, if you haven't kind of gotten it already, is really you need to get a ramp account going and get some of those compliance stocks that are for every vendor complete in advance of any opportunities that may come up, but also to monitor opportunities. Subcontractors often join our mandatory meetings for our RFQs just to kind of do a little bit of investigation of who might be trying to get a prime contract. So Daniel mentioned that we would want to maybe give subcontractors little hints here and there. I think that's a hint. You just because you're not planning on bidding as a prime, you can join the meeting and get an idea of who's looking at bidding on this. And then you can, go from there and figure out what your business strategy is going to be. We call it respond internally. It's not really a bid until it gets to the task order solicitation, when the projects are ready and a task order solicitation is, or an invitation to bid is issued. But yeah, it's basically the same thing, responding to the RFQ. And then you can also look at attendance sheets. If you go see who attended, we're pretty diligent about making sure that everybody who attends is documented, because we're required to. And that's a good little place for you to look. The BIP is generally required for our service contracts. And thank you, Lindsay, for that really great illustration of how the BIP works. It's a very important part of our process. It's an outreach and good faith negotiation, very important there. So it's something the city takes very seriously. Next slide, please. So a little bit about us. We're the city, and this actually ties back into the question about the business tax registration certificate, the BTRC. You need to get a city BTRC, not a county one, and that has come up. People have had problems with other municipalities issue BTRCs. We are the city of Los Angeles, and we're Rec and Parks, not Parks and Recreation. That's a TV show, and but we're Parks and Recreation, I think, is the county also. So folks contact us and say, I thought you had this opportunity. No, that was the county. We have a lot of land, and we have a lot of programs, and at a lot of different places all throughout the city. We have an infrastructure that requires environmental and maintenance maintenance contracts. So when I say maintenance, I don't mean necessarily like janitorial. I mean any kind of maintenance. A lot of those contracts we looped into our previous presentation on construction contracts, but this is a very service contract focused department. And a lot of our services are focused towards the community, educational, cultural, for young adults and seniors. Next slide, please. All right, so I mentioned these are some kind of upcoming things. I kind of just took some highlights. We have others, but these are some highlights. We have environmental services benches that are coming up. We're going to talk about those a little bit. We have some specific signature programs like Play LA, and we have service contract benches that have been developed in order to assist with those programs. And we also have training services that we do for internal customers and for the community. Then we have ongoing specialized services contracts. And those are usually handled as RFPs, sorry. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about environmental. I don't know if any of you live near a park, but sometimes parks have lakes, and sometimes lakes need to be managed. Well, always they need to be managed, especially in an urban area. And what exactly is lake management? You hear in the news a lot lately about LA having a wide variety of airborne illnesses and then mosquitoes and various invasive species that are coming in to our lakes. Well, we need to have the service providers who have the expertise to come in and clean these lakes up and monitor them on an ongoing basis. So we've put together an RFQ. We'll be having a mandatory meeting this month, and we'll hopefully get a bunch of contractors that can help with this. The next two environmental contracts we have coming up are previous contracts that we've had a bench for, and these are impact analysis. What is the environmental impact of various things that we do? And then site assessment, going in and looking at what our property's current environmental state is. Next slide, please. All right, I mentioned Play LA. Play LA is you know, the city of Los Angeles is going to be hosting the Summer Olympics and the Paralympic Games. 028, that I guess that's 28. And for the third time in world history, you know, and then also for the first time in a generation. So we're gearing up for that. And what we'd like to do is be able to prepare the youth of today to be the participants in Olympic events tomorrow. So that's what Play LA is all about. And we're working on a set of contracts to be able to assist both with the Summer Olympic Games, with the training for those sports, and also for Paralympic Games. And we have various grant funding that is going to be utilized under these contracts. Next slide, please. This is a huge contractual bench that is going before our board. We're already awarding. There's a possibility we may open it again. We're not sure, but I just wanted to provide it for you as a list of services that we're working on. We have about 40 contractors that are being selected for this. And all of the categories there down to 7. And then those number 7 is technically not part of Play LA, but it was in the same set of contracts. We have a meals and catering contracts. I know some of you I see in the chat that you are meal and catering. You provide food, but not as a service. You provide the product. That's not exactly what this contract is. This is more meals and catering for our events. And then we have an equestrian training RFP we're working on to try to get an equestrian program for children. We may have a rock climbing RFP coming very soon. And then, yeah, we also have a set of youth adaptive sports contracts. And yes, let me just look in the chat because I see it's kind of blowing up here. Okay, Pamela, I'll get to your question in just a second. I did want to say, please, okay, my daughter's a chef caterer. Great, Patrick, thank you for letting us know that. Tell her again, what's the key word here? Ramp, monitor ramp, and sign up for notifications, because if we re-release meals and catering, which could happen, then, you know, she'll have a chance to go there and find out about it in advance. And let's see who else is here. Rob, does RAP have a tentative date to release the list of architectural professional services bench? It's going to be released within the next, on-call bench. I don't have a tentative date for that yet. We're working on that. That's why it's not included in this presentation, but we are working on it. And I don't have a tentative date, but I assume it will happen sooner than I think. It's in process. We do lifestyle PR and would love to help with marketing. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for reaching out. We did just bring this to board, but yeah, there's a chance if you monitor ramp, there's a chance it's going to open again. So please just, if we do open it again, it's going to open right there. Now, I want to go back to the quick question that Pamela had. Sorry, Pamela, it's a little bit off topic here, but I think your question is, can you hire personnel as 1099, which means as subcontractors? That would be in the individual opportunities. You need to go look and see whether or not the prime can hire, whether or not a prime can hire subs to do any work. And usually the way that we handle that is we tell you what percentage of work can be subbed out. I hope that answered the question. Next slide, please. All right. Training. Yeah, I mentioned we do a lot of training. We train our own staff and we train the community. And we are considering right now, we don't know what our financial situation is right now for this, but we're still considering, we just did a pilot program. It was under 20,000 to kind of get an idea of what vendors are out there. But there's a chance this is going to open up again. So please monitor for it if you do any of these training categories. If you are a service provider who provides any of these as their primary focus, please stay in touch and through RAMP. You don't have to reach out to us until we have the opportunity posted, but once it's posted, then you can come to the mandatory meeting. All right, next slide, please. All right, we have some really specialized services as well. I kind of focused on, at the beginning, on the more general services we have, but we have some very specialized things, and we love these. They're very exciting things that the department does. One is a live show, a performer show. There's a performer, if you've ever been to Griffith Observatory, you'll be able to experience one of the most amazing shows about the night sky that I've ever seen. And that's given by a live performer, and it's handled through an RFP. Also, you'll see that there's an aquatic veterinarian that's on call at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, and there's a dive instructor RFP as well. I'm going to kind of go over these really quick. So next slide, please. But it's just interesting. And talking about our meals and catering, somebody mentioned that they have family members who are chefs. That's not uncommon these days. These are some of the events that we host. So we have some pretty big events. And you know, meal and catering services are an essential component of these events. Next slide, please. All right, so this is going to touch on some of the things that Lindsay and Robin's presentation, and they're really great, top-notch experts in this field. But I think it's going to maybe reiterate some things, but it will also cover some other areas. Really, number one, check ramp, please. Always sign up under your NICS code, and make sure you know what opportunities are out there that are for your organization. Please read through the RFQ and all documents very thoroughly. Things like, is a subcontractor allowed? What kind of BTRC do we need? Those things are all answered in the documents, but it's a lot of reading, and a lot of folks, I think one thing, you know, if you get in and redline it or print it up and look at it and circle things, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of digest. Not completing compliance docs. Yeah, look at these things where we ask for a signature, we ask for a notarization. One of the previous presentations, somebody, I think it was at Public Works, said you know, one thing that she sees a lot is the notarization's on a different date from the day it was signed. And don't, you know, be careful about those kind of things. These are official documents, and they're going to be going before our board. So please include all the documents. Check the scope of work, read through it, make sure you understand it, make sure your firm can provide the services, and you can show that because you got to get pre-qualified. Providing projects that don't meet the requirements. If we ask for a certain number of linear feet, for example, this is a construction idea, but I mean, it's the same. We ask for a number of projects that you've done of a particular type that are of a particular size, you need to give it to us. Are you allowed to do business in the state of California? Well, if you're not a sole proprietor, if you're an LLC or a corporation or some of these other business organizations, you need to be registered to do business. So we check the Secretary of State business registration, make sure not just in Delaware, but here in California, you're registered. Not checking your own references. This happens. People will turn in references who weren't satisfied with the work. They never did follow-up to make sure. Make sure they're going to respond to us when we call, because we will call, and make sure that they're going to be satisfied with the work. Verifying contact information for references. This happened a lot during COVID. Not anticipating insurance requirements. Make sure you know what those are. Attempting to add your own contractual terms or negate terms. This has been happening with some of our smaller contracts lately, or with contractors who may have a legal department. Just be aware that most generally, our terms are non-negotiable. That's because we're, you know, for various reasons, but partly because we're a government agency. Next slide, please. All right, so again, here's our business profile. You can find all of our information here on RAMP. I think we've answered everybody's questions except for one who had asked about Kishia Mills. You own Winter Grace Chocolates. Oh, and I don't want to leave you out in the cold because I think this is the only person I haven't addressed. We don't handle, through our contractual mechanisms, we don't handle this kind of contract. It's like a commodity, and it's a food service. But I think one thing I just want to give you a little bit of an idea, and this is kind of off the record. Sometimes there are events I've been to in various municipalities that are held at parks, and you might want to find out about events, and those are sometimes great places to showcase things. So I don't know if that helps you. I don't really have any experience with that because it's kind of more of this is a service focus, but anywho, I think that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Thank you to Lindsay and Robin as well. And yeah, at this time, I'll probably invite both John, Lindsay, Robin, Devin, Mike, if you're here as well, just for a quick time of question and answer and a quick discussion. And so, yeah, and from the question and answers, if you all have any questions you'd like to ask the panel, the presenters from today, if we can answer them, we're more than happy to answer them now, but I'll probably start off with a question for our group, and then we'll get into any other chats that we may, or chat questions we may have as well. So I guess from both Robin, Lindsay, and excuse me, John's presentations, looking at small businesses, like let's just say they're not necessarily ready to be a prime contractor. They've gone through the RFP. They're not, necessarily, they're like, oh, I have, like 2 out of the 5 categories. What should they be thinking of? And I know you mentioned like the pre-bidders conference. I think John mentioned or was it Robin that mentioned the attendee list? But what are some of the strategies you've seen small businesses maybe become successful in that networking, as well as creating a proposal with other firms as well? So I'll just throw that question: what can small businesses do to better maybe propose, or what can they do if they're not necessarily ready?
So for us, at LADOT, we do virtual pre-bidders conference. We didn't really go into depth on that, but what we do is we do like a virtual networking at the end. So after the pre-bidders conference, we give the project manager the opportunity, if it's going to be a big project, to do virtual networking. And what that means is via Zoom, we set up the primes register in advance, and then we have them in virtual rooms. And then it gives you the opportunity as a sub to come and tell them, this is what I do, etc., exchange contact information. But one of the big things that we recommend is when you see an opportunity, if you follow a profile for any of the departments, if you see something, take a look at it. And typically they will go ahead, if a big company wants to be the prime, they will make it known, and then you can email them. Also email everyone from the attendees list. We used to do them in person, and we would recommend people to have like a 1-sheet profile of their company. Just quick, what do you do? Contact information. Here's a list of everything we do, because then you can email it to them and they can take a look at it. And when you email it to them, on the title, put the opportunity and what you want to do. Be like, this is what we can do. And the reason for that is because that way they know. The primes usually get a lot of companies that will reach out to them. So this gives you like a 1-up, and it's fast. If you send a deck, if you send a video, we've noticed that anything longer than a minute, if it's going to take them more than a minute, they're going to have to make time for it. But if it's quick, bullet points, you tell them what you do, what you can do, and give them times, it helps them to meet with you. And you don't have to be a prime. Honestly, these primes need subs, especially if you're in California or in the city of Los Angeles. It can help with, Lindsay touched base a little bit on the local business preference program. So a lot of times these big prime companies are national and they're not based in LA, but they want those points. So they're going to look for companies that are in Los Angeles. So
That's
those
a
are
great
just
point.
a quick thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to touch on that as well. So to what you're saying, and I think DOT does a fantastic job of, those after post pre-bidders conference, meeting networking events as well. And yeah, I just want to echo what you said in terms of the local business preference program. As you're mentioning, yeah, we have large construction or service companies that are not necessarily based out of California, but if you as a sub, and I want to kind of jump in here a bit, if you are a sub that is a local county or local city business, you can actually help them become more competitive in their bid, because they get preference points, or preference dollars if it's RFP, but they get a preference like up to like an 8 or 12% preference on their bid. So technically you can save them money in their bid. So that's an excellent point. Thank you so much, Robin, for that. And yeah, and maybe I'll throw it to the other presenters as well, or other panelists, in terms of what are some of the other tips that you can maybe give to the small businesses that are maybe not ready to be a prime, or ready to maybe contract with the city of LA? What are some of the other tips that you all can give?
This is John Busby again from the Department of Recreation and Parks. My little tip is there's the upcoming build with. It's not a seminar, but it's kind of a consortium or a group of vendors. It's a place where departments can come and showcase their upcoming contracts, and then vendors, subs and primes, can kind of meet each other there. I think it's a great place. And Daniel, you're going to be notifying the members of this conference about Build With, right?
Yes, at the end.
Okay, great. So I just pay attention to that. Also, somebody is mentioning about softscape and hardscape. Look online right now. Rec and Parks has something about asphalt paving that there's several categories under that one. Please look, that might be similar to what you're describing. I'm not sure. And then business marketing service provider for international companies. Does City of LA purchase from non-US based manufacturers as well? You're talking about purchasing again, and we're not talking about purchasing here. We're talking about services. If you're talking about services, yes, we do have vendors from outside, but you need to be registered with the Secretary of State for the state of California, okay? Now, again, look in the individual documents, because when I say yes, Lindsay's over there shaking her head going, oh no, not our department. And so every department's different, right? You need to really read whether or not you're allowed to bid in the documents. But yeah, hope that helped.
And definitely, I think to one of the questions, Manuel, the question is, or actually John's mentioned it as well as Lindsay, but registering on Ramp and then finding your next codes. I think that's something else that, as maybe it would be my tip. Make sure that you are once again registered for Ramp, and then also look up your North American Industry Census code, more or less what code is your company, and therefore once you load that onto Ramp, you will get notified. You will get automatic emails, as well as vendors can actually do outreach to you, and also yeah, you'll receive a monthly newsletter and so forth, and things that you will get outreach to. And so please do register for Ramp. Please do find your next code. Please do fill your vendor profile as well. And if you have any questions in terms of how to do that, we have those monthly Ramp webinars again, and then we'll include a link in there as well. But yeah,
and a lot of our RFPs and RFQs say we want you to see experience with other government agencies. One of my staff members just mentioned, Harold just said, get experience from smaller cities. Go to smaller cities. Go to other municipalities. There are a lot of municipalities around here, and it might be easier to start in another place and then come back to us. And LAUSD. Look at LAUSD and county opportunities.
I also noticed in the questions there's a lot for purchasing. We do have procurement benches. So like at LADOT, not our group, but we have a material services group, and also our general services department has, and also DWP, they have like a list of vetted companies that we can purchase things from. So like I see that you have vests, safety vests. We need this all the time. So you should maybe look into that. And then and I think it's also through Ramp LA, but just something for you to know, just I think it's named different. It's more like procurement material services. I'm not exactly sure that language, but just make your profile, because mostly GSD, DWP, building and safety department, and even our a different, like our counterparts do it as well. So
yeah. And I believe we have a commodities webinar recording as well. I would highly recommend in the link or the presentation that you will receive, there's a link to a YouTube channel. That commodities webinar is there. We actually had general services kind of give the small business community a rundown of how to participate in the commodities purchasing, as well as there's a great presentation by them, as Robin was mentioning. So yeah. I do see Manuel. Yes, all of these things that you mentioned, flat work, grass, landscaping, it's more construction based, but please do once again, and we actually do have a construction webinar as well. This one specifically was for professional services, but please do look at Ramp, as John just mentioned, and register, find your next codes, and then you will be registered there.
Yeah, we have one coming up for some of these things. And actually landscaping, we have one we haven't posted, but go look at what's posted now so you don't miss the mandatory manual.
yeah, and we're gonna have an RFP going out for landscape and maintenance of our facilities. So maybe you can team up with another team, like other members, and you guys can put in a bid for this RFP when we release it.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, Robin. I guess that's the other thing in terms of and something I've seen as well is teaming up with other, people that you meet at the pre-bidders conference, or, if there's other subcontractors that aren't necessarily, the complete package of what the RFP, RFQ is requesting, maybe you can actually go in as like a joint entity or a joint group to actually complete, all of the requirements. The Office of Procurement specifically in our outreach, marketing, and kind of education contract that we had a couple of years ago, we had a vendor do this exact thing. Our main contractor actually had two other subcontractors that worked with them that fulfilled the other areas of contract, or the other scope of work areas that they did not prepare, or they're not able to do themselves. But yeah, once they actually had the three groups kind of present, and then there was a prime contractor, they fulfilled all of the requirements and they ended up successfully winning. And just kind of another point as well to the RFP, as well as the sample proposal or the winning proposal that we've included with the resource folder. Yeah, the city actually does do a good amount of business with small businesses. The Office of Procurement, the last two procurements we've had were both let to small business entities, small local businesses for that matter. And so please do, keep on trying. And I feel like, yeah, if there's anything that, we can, continually reiterate is that it is difficult. You can go through it together, and please do, try again. You might not be successful the first time, second time, but one of these times, if you really truly are interested in contracting with the city of Los Angeles and let alone government procurement, please do go through that. Prepare yourselves with, as Robin and Lindsay mentioned, your compliance documentation. We actually, in our first small business webinar, we also did a presentation on that where we go through essentially what are the specific requirements that are listed there, including your insurance requirements, as well as, just like where and when things need to be submitted. And another point to that vendor compliance guidebook, please do take a look. There are, I believe, like 50, or maybe not 50, but there's a ton of compliance requirements that are listed there, and it will tell you when things are due, what it is, and what you as a vendor have to do. What are the instructions for you? Yeah, that's something else we're kind of excited. We're very excited about as well. But we'll have time for maybe one other question. So I guess in terms of, like, maybe we'll just ask this one. What are some of the, I guess you can say, if let's just center it around the small businesses, like what are some of the most, what are what are traits of successful small businesses in doing contracting with, with the city, with DOT, with Rec and Parks, especially with the RFQs or whatever they may be? What are things that you both have seen?
Detail oriented.
No, go ahead, John. You go first.
No, just detail oriented in the compliance docs, I think. Sorry, Robin, I didn't mean to cut you off. You go ahead.
No, yes, of course, details. If you come in as a sub-consultant, you're not going to have to fill out those paperwork. A lot of the paperwork that we talked about in sitting contracting, the prime will have to do that. But just make sure that you have all of your license, your business license, you have your financials ready to go, and always have like a cost sheet. I always recommend that. Have a cost sheet for like the next 5 years, because right now we're really seeing all these opportunities and they're going to be like for the next year to 5 years. Have that available for LADOT. A lot of our subs are outreach, marketing, customer service, surveying, landscaping, implementing technology, applications. We've noticed that a lot of that goes to sub-consultants. Usually the primes are like management companies, and then they look to sub-consultants for everything else, like printing, photography. Those are like big ones that we get a lot. And trainers, train the trainers are big ones. So those are the ones that we've been noticing a lot. But yeah, just hopefully you guys join a team and you guys can start as a sub and then build it up, and then you'll become a prime.
Awesome. And
You've seen it happen, right, Robin? Yeah, we about a year and a half ago, the CPO showcased a sub who had moved from a really small business up to the prime level, and it was a minority-owned business, and it was a great success story. It was a great story. So, you know, hopefully you'll become one of those. You have to have a positive attitude when you're in business, I guess, huh?
Absolutely.
And
Uh,
if I
no,
can add on to John's point about the minority-owned businesses too, just if you're a minority-owned business or small, any other certifications that you can qualify as, make sure you're registered as that, especially with public works. A lot of engineering projects are federally funded as well, which the city has its requirements for the subcontracting, but some of those federal requirements are even require more minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses or small businesses. So just make sure those, certifications are up to date and registered.
thank you, Devin. Yeah, definitely. And just once again, would like to thank the panelists presenters. And then Rihanna, if we can actually put up the slides again, and then we'll go ahead and we'll close this out.
I have one more quick question.
Sure.
Eric asked about the on-call professional services. Again, that's not been posted, Eric, and it's still in the formulation phase. But once it is, it's going to be for primes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John. And with that, we'll go to the next slide, Rihanna. Yeah, so we do have, once again, the links to our business resources or small business resources. Once again, please do attend the Office of Procurement webinars on RAMP registration, as well as you're currently in the small business webinar series. We do have additional, business source centers, City of LA procurement resources found at PACE. They have a wealth of information there as well. Please do click on that link, New Economics for Women. They also have a great program, business programs there. Accessing LA, which we have a slide in a couple, I think the next slide is Accessing LA, but we'll get into that in a second. Small Business Academy as well is something that BCA and the proprietaries are DWP, Department of Water and Power, and what is it? I believe it's LAWA, the airports, actually put together a Small Business Academy. So please click that and register for it when it becomes time. I believe they run 1 or 2 cohorts annually. So please do be aware of that. We will go ahead on that resource folder link, put a link with all of the resources as mentioned here today on this call, as well as we have the small business pamphlet there linked, as well as a survey link. Could you go ahead and put the survey link in the chat as well? So please, we just ask that you would go ahead and fill the survey out. Please answer the questions. It would help us figure out how to best serve the small business community in the future. And we'll go to the next slide here. Close out. Just also put a link for standard provisions, just kind of nerdy thing, but please do read all of the contract compliance requirements, your standard provisions. We've gone ahead and listed all of those things here. We'll go to the next slide. And Accessing LA. And so the top line there is actually a hyperlink to this website where you can register for Accessing LA. This is the Board of Public Works, the Bureau of Contract Administration, Department of Public Works, construction outreach, it is a matchmaking event. And so please do register for that if you are in the construction space, which it seems like there are a few here, as well as even if you're not and you're interested in, what construction or contracting, or if there's opportunities for service contractors, it might be worth a visit for you as well. So it's in person, Tuesday, February 27th, 2024 at the Expo Center, Roy Anderson Recreation Center. So the email is listed there, but this presentation will have a hyperlink to the registration page. And so with that said, yes, so you will be receiving a copy of the presentation, the resource folder, through an email from Zoom. So we thank you so much. Please do feel free to contact us. We have please contact us on snow.lacity.org/rampla. There is a ticketing system, and our support team will actually go through that, triage it, and then they'll route it as necessary. And there'll be people to help you about RAMP or procurement-related questions as well. As well as please do follow us on social media at LA City Procurement. We're found on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And these are all hyperlinks to those things. So for more information from the Office of Procurement, as well as any other helpful resources that we may create, please do follow us on these social media channels. And so with that said, thank you so much to the presenters, as well as a shout out to the Office of Procurement team. And we hope you enjoyed this presentation of the small business webinar and hope to see you again. Thank you all.